Now we're going to get into something a little deeper and more complex, which is actually the looking at what is otherwise embedded in the words themselves that you might not read off the surface. So I was trying to explain how the mechanism works, and now we're going to try to get this other concept. So here's one way to look at the Dalet. If the Gimel is the extension out of the Bet, and the Bet is the extension, you might say, of the Aleph, it sets up a pattern. So here's the interesting thing about how the alphabet works. It can be read one way as simply a string of letters, a chronological sequence. It then can be read as a bunch of nouns or objects. It can also be read as this story, which I tried to run through with you, but it's also a pattern of how things fit together. So there's this kind of an esoteric Jewish determination from the knowledgeable ones for many years that the Almighty Himself created the material universe with these letters, or through these letters, or via the mechanism of these letters. And it's like, what does that mean? You could say, well, in the beginning He said, let there be light, and there was light. Okay, He spoke the words, but what does that mean? How do you create light with words? You can process all these things, and that's another trail that we could go down, but I'm going to try to stay on the Dalet and on this matter here. Maybe we can get into that notion with the letter He, which is a revelation. But I'm just trying to say that there's these esoteric, which is to say not so evident, hidden, invisible is esoteric. You have to have inside knowledge to know what that means. Exoteric would be clearly evident on the surface, that like your skin, exoskeleton is an insect with the skeleton on the outside. It's the concept of, everybody can see that. So some of these notions, like where do these guys come up with this stuff? Do they have special occult? Interesting, the word ocular is where we get the word occult, which is that which is evident, which is of the eye. And occult, we say, oh, that's stuff you can't see, that's invisible. So like we said before in Hebrew, every positive spin or blessing of a word, also it has a negative spin or the inverse or the cursing. Everything's wrapped up, positive, negative. You might say like this symbol of the yin and yang, which is an Eastern thing, but these concepts are embedded in the Hebrew. So if we say, oh, that's a foreign religion, oh, that's an Eastern thing, and we're supposed to be Western, it's like, if you look at all this stuff, these messages are embedded even in the foreign languages and even in the foreign cultures and religions. A lot of this is a Hebraic root, an Edenic core, like Isaac Moseson's talk about the Edenic language. He has a book called The Origin of Speeches, which is referenced, his name is referenced on the bottom of the chart, which is a wonderful book to read. It gets pretty literate if you get into the 7 different mechanisms by which your tongue, your mouth can form and put syllables together and where the different languages have spun off. He's investigated over 200 different languages and maps these 7 different basic patterns of how R's and L's are switched around and B's and P's and stuff like that. Anyway, to get back to how the language works, I'm going to show you a few things. And remember, all this has to do with the Dalet. So if the Bet, it leaves the Aleph, now it's other, and now the Gimel represents both a tether between, but it's also the option to be of or not of, to be separate if one chooses, then the Dalet being a choice to say, well, you have the choice on the one hand, you come to a fork in the road. You can either go to the right or to the left. It's a choice. If you stand at the threshold of a door, you can either choose to stay on this side or to go to the other side. So Dalet, in a way, represents a choice if it's a door or a threshold. Life or death, blessing or cursing. It's the place where contracts are made, where you can either cooperate and go with the terms of the contract or break the contract, in which case it's also the place of blood. And remember, another picture, like what Mark was talking about, there was a provision in the Torah for one who had sold themselves into a bondage of being a servant for a while. And like taking on a creditor. And if you say, you know, I kind of like this working for this guy. He's got a nice place. I get to go to work every day, and he treats me well. If I was a free man, I'd have to go find another job, farm my own land, take care of myself. You know, I kind of like living with this guy. I choose to be a bondservant. He'd go and he'd put his ear on the doorpost, and the guy would drive an awl through his ear, in which case the blood would flow down the doorpost onto the threshold, and he would become a bondservant, essentially for the rest of his life. And the man, the creditor, you might say, would take care of him, but he says, hey, I want to do this. So when Paul talked about being a bondservant, it was that basically concept of the same thing, saying, I will bleed, Adam, in order to make a contract deal to be, well, as we're saying, to which tyrant, to which despot, to what overlord do you subject yourself to? Would it be Egypt? Will it be the government of the United States? Will it be Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh? Will it be some other tradition that dominates you, some ghosts in your past that terrorize your mind and to make you do this or that because you want to keep the evil demons at bay? I mean, who's going to be your master? This all has to do with that. To get to some other concepts here, I started earlier to talk about the ayin, the table of showbread, the word faces, panim. The word showbread, if you read it, literally is panim, which is faces. And faces are like the words that come out of your mouth. The letter ayin having to do with the Yom Kippur, you might say, is Judgment Day. So here's a picture of some scales with two things weighing in the balance, right? And one might go down and the other one going up, tipping the scales. It's also like a picture of a teeter-totter, seesaw sort of a thing, where something's here and something's there. And if you press down here, this thing's going to go up here. These are all Gimel concepts. And when you have a word that's spelled with a Gimel ayin, it's like those are similar concepts. The ayin is like this scale of weight and measure, and the Gimel is this boomerang concept. And here this word is used, Nun Gimel ayin, in Jeremiah 4:18 and Hosea 4:2. The same word is used, and basically what it's saying is your path, this is Jeremiah 4:18, your path and your deeds have done this to you. This is your wickedness. It is bitter, for it is Nun Gimel ayin. Nun Gimel ayin means longing, yearning, wailed, or to dig in, make holes, to roll in. I mean, you trench yourself in. Nun Gimel ayin means infection, contamination. These are all in the dictionary. It also means to touch, reach, applied, draw near, arrived, to become in contact with. If you see a sign of leprosy, it's like, oh, you got the plague. That's Nun Gimel ayin. Hey Gimel ayin, we talked about the ways to use the dictionary. If you look up the word Gimel ayin, it means the bleeding or the wailing or the bah or animal noises. It's like, what is that? You can't get anywhere if you just look up Gimel ayin. So you look up these other words. Gimel ayin, Nun Gimel ayin. Nun is a prefix to impart. Hey Gimel ayin meaning the. Lamed Gimel ayin meaning unto. Mem Gimel ayin meaning a place of. Bet Gimel ayin, Aleph Gimel ayin, Tav Gimel ayin. If you know the letters which act as prefixes, you can then look up the words putting these prefixes in front of it. And if you know what other letters are a suffix, or if you add a vav or a yod, you can look up these different ways to spell the word, and you'll get a better feeling of what the word is, because you can't always just look up the word in the dictionary and find it. I was going to, when we first started, give a talk on the dictionary. That didn't happen. I'm going to hopefully do it during we're going to have a break between the Zayin and the Chet. A Zayin is a weapon which cuts off, and on the song there's a Selah, which is a pause to think about it, and then the Het. We're going to add an extra week. So instead of there being the 22-letter weeks, we're going to add a Selah week, which is between the 7th and the 8th. We'll explain the dictionary. I'm going to try to get together a PowerPoint with a whole bunch of these verses that we can put together so that you can see where this stuff comes from, because it's not out of nowhere. And then we'll have more of a question and answer thing, just so you know what we're intending on doing. Basically what this say, Hey Gimel ayin means arrival, touching, reaching, cause to arrive. Yod Gimel Yod ayin, acquired property, labor, toil, product, was made to toil. Shin Gimel ayin, Shin as a prefix can mean who, or the one who. So the one who Gimel ayin is now the word madness, confused, confounded, insanity, or crazy. What has that got to do with anything? There's this concept that says, that which I feared has come upon me. But what Yahweh says in Hosea and Jeremiah is he says, when you see the enemy at the gates, if you read everything after this verse in Jeremiah 4, for the next 10 chapters, it's all about the devastation of the king of Babylon coming to Jerusalem and all the horrible, terrible, tragic, unfortunate things that are going to happen. But Yahweh says, you guys don't have to live this. You don't have to go through this. What you need to do is come back to my words. But if you don't come back to my words, this is what's going to happen. And you could say, oh, there's that big monster God of the Old Testament again, throwing a tantrum, breaking things, whooping his kids. And it's like that picture of and I use the word God on purpose there. I don't often use that word, and the reason why is the word spelled Gimel Dalet, pronounced God, was actually the name of a Canaanite deity of fortune and luck. It was a Baal. It was a lesser deity. It was not Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the Elohim, the mighty one of Israel. And so when I'm speaking of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, the mighty one of Israel, the Elohim El Elyon, the Most High, I will not use the Gimel Dalet word. I've decided for my own self to draw the line in my consciousness. So if I'm speaking, if I ever let the word God come out of my mouth, because he said, don't even let the names of these other Elohim, these other deities, come out of your mouth. And I have a friend who tries to reprimand, fellow brethren who use that word. It's like, okay, I will try to reorganize my consciousness to conform to Yahweh's personal preferences, his desires. That's what I'm trying to do. So to run with that for a moment, every time something happens, he said, don't blame me, you did it to yourself. I told you the way this works. And you can say, well, what is Gimel Ayin, which is wailing and bleeding and yearning and longing? If you are yearning and longing for the restoration of the covenant to get to activate what's between those inverted noons, you have to do what he said to do. That's the Dalet. That's the threshold. That's the door. What is the door? What is this choice? What happens at the Dalet? What is the Dalet? What if the Gimel is bringing the Dalet to the Dalet, as the Dalet, revealed as the Dalet? What is the Dalet? You see, with the Gimel being the head, the neck is a conduit, it's a roadway, it's the truck, it's the camel, it's that which is moving, it's the thing which is brought. These are all Gimel concepts, just like Bet has a bunch of concepts, just like Aleph has a bunch of concepts. Dalet's got a bunch of concepts. So you can say the Gimel is bringing the Dalet. Okay, the Dalet is the thing gimmeled by the Gimel on the Gimel. On the roadway, the truck, the vehicle is gimmeling. What's he bringing? The gimmeled thing. What's the gimmeled thing? It's got to be the Dalet, because that's what the letter comes after the Gimel. Okay, I'm trying to show you the way these letters work. They're not just, the Gimel is the camel. It's also the head, the neck. The neck is a conduit. You drop it in the mouth and it goes down into the stomach. It's a pipeline. It's a race where you pull electrical wires. It's a Gimel tube. The highway is a Gimel, that which the Gimel travels on. So the Dalet is all these things also. So you go back to this word chafatz, which is desire. What is Yahweh's desire? The answer's got to be in this alphabet. He didn't hide it, he told us. And if you start looking for certain key words all through reading the scriptures, and you say, if he mentions the word my desire, say, what is that desire? I'll bet you that he will tell you what the Dalet is. Because I would maintain, to show you where this is going, that the Dalet represents or is the enunciation, the display of Yahweh's Dalet. The word chafatz is the word desire. That's just a translation. But you could say, well, here's a fence, and here's a mouth, and the zadi is something that sprouts. Well, pei zadi is literally an opening mouth. So just to relate this to another word, as we mentioned another week, that until the time of the end, kuf is like a shackle. So kuf zadi can be an open shackle. So Daniel 12:4, hide the word and seal the book until the time of the end is ayin dalet, until. Ayin tav, time. Kuf zadi is translated end, but you could read it as the time of the open shackle. Open shackle meaning what? Well, the other interesting thing that the word mem, pei, tav, het means a key, that which opens, or to take your armor off. If Daniel was told to hide the words and seal the book until the time of the kuf zadi, then to take the armor or take that which is hiding and sealing those words is basically the key which takes the armor off. Well, the same word for key is also the word index, which is the way to organize something which was disorganized. And you could say, well, mem, that's the place of, pei is a mouth, the covenant, and sign of the covenant is tav, and a het is the fence. You could say, well, wait a minute, but pei tav, if you look that word up in the dictionary, you'll see that it has something to do with the mouth of the covenant, or the words spoken at the covenant, or the declarations and the terms of the covenant, and they're, which are enclosed in the het. And you can say, well, what is the secret key? Well, it's an index that takes off the armor. I would maintain that the purpose of this class and the purpose of that chart that's out there is an index which takes the armor, the covering, off of the words that were hidden to the terms of the covenant that Daniel was told to hide and seal. That's why I'm thinking that this stuff we're studying is so incredible. And it all fits this. And you could say, well, wait a minute, if pei zadi is an open mouth, so you could say this is the opening of the mouth of the het, which goes back to the bet, which is the gateway of the entrance, which is the one door into the het. Remember that big white fence of the Mishkan had one door and had 4 colors on it, blue, purple, red, had some gold threads. Blue, purple, red were the 3 colors. The 4th color was actually the white linen of the big white fence. Hence, going back to the name Yud-He-Vav-He that we talked about a minute ago, blue, purple, red, white. Blue, the hand of the Creator, like the blue Zitziot, the sapphire, which is generally regarded as blue, throne room floor, the blue, the Creator who made this place, the blue bet. Hey, the purple, the royal decrees, which are the Torah. Vav, the red man, the red blood of the Vav, the 6th letter, which can mean man. It's also nail or hook or bridge, or that which attaches man, attaches the concerns of heaven to the concerns of the earth. That's man's function as that intermediate bridge, the sent one, the prophet, the one in between, like John the Baptist, like Yeshua, the man's at Adam, his job as the red earth, blue, purple, red, and then was to hay, white linen. The second hay, lining up with Yod-He-Vav-He, white linen is like the robes of white righteousness, which is like the first hay, which is the Torah. Righteousness is described as simply doing the words of the Torah. That is righteousness. He gave us a plumb line and said, righteousness is to do what I said to do. Pretty simple. So what is his desire? The open mouth of the stuff that's in the het, and validated, authenticated by the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke over it, kuf, het kuf, those are his commandments. So here you have his treasure box of everything he said to do, and all the blessings, the perks, the benefits that comes with it is everything which is his chok, which is his commandments. I'm trying to connect all these things going around and around like this vortex concept. We mentioned this during the break, that the way to study this Hebrew seems to be not just a straight line Greco-Roman thinking, but around and around. So what's called the parashah cycles of reading the Torah every year, or if you have a triennial cycle, it's you read through the Torah every 3 years, the same things every week, around and around and around. You keep, like the 7th-day cycle, like the festivals, you go around and around, and you get down to this central theme. So my point is, what is this central theme? I would put to you that's the Dalet, which actually looks as an inverted triangle like this, the fine point. Like if this is the needle of a phonograph, right? This is the diamond that picks up and translates scratches into sounds. This is the translator. This is the point. If you look at a hourglass, the microscopic point is like this little triangle by which these things become those things. It's a change. The Dalet is like this place of transition, a place of change, just like a threshold. If you look in mathematics, they'll use 3 dots. It's called delta. It means a change. If this changes into that, well, the Greek word is delta, and it's like, it means change. It's drawn like this. So the idea of drawing the inverse like this is the reason I arbitrarily chose that, by the way. If you look at any Paleo-Hebrew inscriptions, you may not see the triangle drawn this way. Sometimes it's drawn the other way and sometimes cockeyed, but the reason for drawing it this way is because this is the change of state where the Almighty's plan becomes manifest as humanity as the delta, the Dalet. the door. So I've arbitrarily chosen to draw it in this position. Not the Greek way. It's the antithesis of the Greek way. If you look back onto Leviticus 19:2 and Leviticus 11:45, there's other places too, but Yahweh says concerning what to eat and then what to do regarding other behaviors, he says, I am kadosh, therefore Israel, you are to be kadosh. What does kadosh mean? Well, it's translated as holy, but the phonetic word holy, happens to also be the name of a deity from India, a goddess by the name Holy. So this one particular friend of mine says, don't use that word. Oh, come on, it's the Holy Spirit. Don't use that word. It's not the Holy Spirit. It's the Ruach HaKodesh. Kadosh. What's Kadosh? It's Kuf Dalet Shin. This is Kadosh. What is Kuf? Well, Kuf is it's like the bottle of a jar that a liquid pours out of, and Dalet Shin has to do like with dousing something with water. So you could say, well, this is like the pure, clean water that pours out of Yahweh's personal being. That's Kadosh. Untouched by humanity, untranslated, unfiltered, unparaphrased, not mixed up. Do we have anything which is Kadosh on the face of the earth? I mean, everything in nature has been, genetically modified. Not everything, but they're trying to. In our doctrines and our theologies, well, those are pretty scrambled. What's Kadosh on the face of the earth? I would put to you that it's this alphabet, because this is keyed to the Mishkan, which he said this is the pattern that he showed Moshe. It's the pattern of the 7 days, which he determined before there was ever a world to make, much less a man on it, which showed up in day 6. And it's keyed to the 7 festivals, the Moedim, which are the appointed times, which he said, these are my festivals, which I'm giving to you, my people Israel, in Leviticus 23. So these things are Kadosh. They're Yahweh's stuff. So because his stuff is keyed, the main index key to this whole alphabet, which is the center section here, is again, the song talks about that, and that information is on the chart. This must be Kadosh. So to say, well, this stuff is Kadosh, it's pure and clean. And if Yahweh says, this is how I am, so I'm going to make you guys like me. How do we get back to his stuff? His face, what he looks like, is the same as the word for, essentially, the word word, as we talked about pene. So he gave us his words so that we could be just like him. But then you could say, well, okay, we don't know what he looks like. Really, well, Moses said, who are you that I should tell the leaders of Israel when they say, well, who sent you, that I should reference you? And he said, Eyeh Asher Eyeh. We talked about this last week. Aleph means I will, Hey, reveal, Yod, the hand of the Creator, and this is the revealing of the hand of the Creator, which we could say is the Torah. So you could say, well, and it's translated, I am that I am, or I will be that, or whoever I will be, because the word Asher literally in the dictionary means that, or who, or that which, or to be straight, or whoever would be blessed. And so part of my thinking is that when we're trying to dissect these words, it's like, well, which one of those translations is the one you use? You use them all. So the word Asher literally might mean, whoever would be blessed, this is the straight path that that person will align himself with. To correct, make strong, make straight, if you would be blessed, this is it. So when you read the word Asher, one of the tribes is named Asher, that's the word. His mother was saying, I'm so blessed, this is great, but there's other things embedded in the word. So you could say, well, what's Ayah Asher mean? I am that I am, or I will be where I be. It's like, don't ask, I'll do whatever I want. That's one way to read it, but you could say, I am or I will be that which I said in what I made and revealed. Well, what did he make and reveal? The alphabet. You could say, I'm the guy that made this stuff and revealed everything I was going to do and everything that I declared myself to be in this stuff that I made. So the heavens reveal the glory of Elohim, and the alphabet describes his pene as his word. Then you could say, well, this path, this Asher, the word Yishar, Yod Shin Resh, like in Israel, is the first letter Yod, as in the hand that works, bad Yod. Yod, Shin, Resh, the first 3 letters of the word Israel. The letter Yod means he will as a prefix, whereas Aleph means I will. So Israel is he that would be blessed by walking the straight path. That's Israel. If you want to be Israel, it's like you're looking for the blessing of walking the straight path. You're saying, what's the straight path? You go back, well, here's the straight path. Though it looks chaotic, like the letter Mem, it's the path from Aleph to Tav. If that's the straight path, which is Kadosh, because it's keyed to his stuff, which he invented, he gave us, which makes it the Edenic language from before the Tower of Babel, because it's keyed to the days of creation and the festivals, it's not of human origin. It's Kadesh. It's Kadosh. It's not human. Apes and orangutans and cavemen and Neanderthals started grunting and scratching. It became sign language, which became phonetic human language. No, the Creator determined this. So he embedded within this alphabet the meanings of the letters. This is who I am, Aleph, and this is what I'm going to do. And this is the orchestrated, calibrated, synchronized timing of the 7 days, the rest day, the festivals, the Mishkan pattern, and the meaning of every word embedded in this. So if we study this, we're studying his face, which is what he's going to do, which is the words that he gave to Israel to walk straight. So the word ruach is the word for to expand or to make wide. It's also like to ventilate, to open the windows, to let the wind blow through. It's also to say, this is where he spread it out. In the word, then, Ruach HaKodesh, the word is also spirit, or like the jet stream, or the prescribed path of the wind, the Ruach. This is the prescribed path of Aleph becoming Tav. So you could say the alphabet is the Ruach HaKodesh, which is otherwise known as the Holy Spirit. You could say, is this the Holy Spirit? Yeshua said, when he's leaving, he says, I will not leave you comfortless. I'm going to leave, and I'm going to send you the Comforter, who will lead you into the truth. Did he leave us the alphabet to lead us into the truth? Or did he leave us his Spirit, who will not say anything contrary to the truth? And if everything in here is the truth, then everything that's true has to be conformed to what this alphabet represents. So now there's a question. There's another verse that says, if you stay in my words are in you, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. There's a difference between knowing the truth and the concept of what is truth. Pilate asked Yeshua, what is truth? It's a philosophical study. It's quite a conundrum to sit there and process through this notion. What is truth, or what is the truth? Again, I would say it all goes back to the Dalet. We don't really have time to do this, but if you go back to the meaning of every letter, you realize that Aleph is the plan to put it into a box, a container, the universe, that the Gimel is going to become sent to the Dalet, revealed as the Vav. It all goes back to the Dalet. If you look at the meaning of all the other letters, like the Kaf and Lamed, the Torah inside the Ark of the Covenant, okay, the Kaf and Lamed are the Torah, but what's the heart of the Torah? What's the Torah mean? What's it all about? It goes back to the heart of the matter, which I would propose is the Dalet. The Dalet is the heart of the matter. So if the word, which is describing to us Yahweh's heart, his desire, Pezadi, the open mouth that's in the Chet, if it goes back to saying, what are you, Gimel Ayin, what are you yearning for? And Yahweh says, if you look at these two verses, he said, this is the horrendous Holocaust, the Inquisition that's coming to you because you turned away from my words. But if you yearn to have my blessing, come back to my words. What words? What did he express by his words? Again, I'm proposing that the index of this chart is revealing what his desire is, so we can come back. And he said, I'm the guy who made this stuff up, put it into creation, and explained myself in what I made to reveal to you, which is the words of my Torah. That's how important all this stuff is. And when he says, I am Kadosh, therefore you are to be Kadosh, the way we get the covenant back is not to say, is it now he's going to restore the covenant? Okay, it's the time. Okay, give us the covenant. Moshe was on the beach with the people. You got the deep blue sea, you got the mountains, and you got the Egyptian army. The only thing holding him back was the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. And that's the only thing that kept those Egyptians from coming in and slaughtering the 12 tribes. And Moses was standing there saying, Yahweh, what have you brought us here for? Please, do something. And Yahweh says, hold on there, pal. What are you yelling at me for? What have you got in your hand? It's like, a stick. So use your stick. How am I supposed to use this stick? That's the question. How are we supposed to use this? Well, he answered the question. Raise your stick up and hold it out and speak to the ocean or the sea. And I'd have to go back and read it exactly. But the point is, the wind blew all night. The waters parted. The pillar of fire, pillar of smoke held the enemy at bay. tribes of Israel crossed over. There's a difference between begging Yahweh for help, and again we said last week, Yah, that's the creator, because Yod-He literally means that which exists, and the word Shua, read it in the dictionary, Shin Vav Ayin, is to cry for help. To say the word Yahshua is to say, Yahweh, help me. The one who causes things to really exist, help me. Deliver me, save me, redeem me, rescue me from this situation. Whereas the word Yahu, which is Yod-He Vav, which is Yahweh's bridge connection, Yahweh's, that's the Vav thrown in there. 2 weeks from now we'll talk more about the Vav. And then Shin Ayin is the word for save, help, redeem, deliver. So the word for Shin Ayin is not Shua. You could put a phonetic of a dot there and make it Shua, or some people spell it Shin Vav Ayin. That would be pronounced Shua, but if it was simply Shin Ayin, it's probably more likely the Shah. But nevertheless, the point is, that's what he is sending to save. But if he says, use what I gave you, what did he give us? He gave us words. How do we use these words? And if you go back to the word Nun Gimel Ayin, and he says, the thing that's going to come upon you, and again, the Gimel is the boomerang, and the Ayin is the scales, which if you do this, then that happens, you press down here. They're pictures that says, when you see horrible things happening, this is how horrible the stuff is that you guys have been doing. Read through Jeremiah and Hosea. It's all through there. He said, in the Psalms and other places, there's a phrase, Kilei Olam Chazdo. Does anybody ever hear any of that? Kilei Olam Chazdo. It's translated, for your mercy endures forever. The word ki, kaf yod, if you look it up in the dictionary, the kaf is an open hand. So one way to draw it is with a 5-finger pattern. The simple way is to just, which I do just to draw it simply as just a kaf, which is another way. It's also drawn like this, and I'll tell you, if you're carving into wood or stone, this is a lot easier way to cut it. And flipped around, it's our letter K. But when you're carving into a piece of wood and you're doing the grain or a piece of stone, it doesn't work to draw the 5-finger. You just can't do it. Even the 4 is hard. That's why that happened. So when you look at the orthography, the orthography of this way the paleo letters work, and you find a distinction or a controversy in the way they're why is that? Sometimes it's simply what are the mediums that you're using? Anyway, the word kaf yod can mean, it says in the dictionary, a burning or a branding. Of course, we talked about the letter tet being like a branding, almost looks like a branding iron. Heat it up and say, this is mine. But so kaf yod, if it's a burning or branding, it also means so, thus, therefore, or on account of, or for, ... In other words, it's this transition word that says, if you do this, then this is going to happen. Or because you've done this, therefore, this is what's going to happen. And Yahweh always talks about, because you regard my words, this is the blessing. Because you haven't regarded my words, this is the curse that's coming upon you. And when you see this terrible thing, read Jeremiah chapters 4 and on, you'll see the terrible thing. Then he says, it didn't have to be that way. You guys could have come back. But if you read Jeremiah chapter 3, and a lot of people don't know this, he talks about the divorce of the house of Israel. The divorce of the house of Israel. And he says, your sister Yehudah was more wicked than you are. Though he doesn't say he divorced Yehudah. But she saw what happened to Israel. And Israel simply spun out, went nuts. So this word Gimel Ayin, if you look close, you got the Nun Gimel Ayin. Literally it means to go mad and insane and crazy. Dementedly lost all your senses. Well, the word for the goy, which is Gimel Vav, or Ha, the goy, Gimel Vav Yod, literally is the same word for steering, which is helm, which is rudder, which is also phonetics, or meditation, or the way you think and talk. The way you think and talk affects the navigation of your mind. And according to Yahweh, if you don't think about the things that he said to think about, you will go nuts, you will go insane, you will go crazy, and your enemies will overtake you. And the way to correct that is to study his words go back to the Hebrew, go back to the Shabbat, and proclaiming and doing as much as possible the festivals. There's a word, I can't remember what it is right now, but it has to do with learning Hebrew, and it literally means to cure from insanity. I'd have to look up that word to remember what it is, but imagine that. What if this was true? That you could cure insanity from studying Hebrew? Because to study Hebrew is not just to study a language, it's to regard the ways of Yod-He-Vav-He, according to his open mouth inside the Chet, his treasure box, which is his personal heart matters. You could say, well, what are those things? Let's go back to the word ki, which is the so thus, therefore. And you could say, well, okay, so how does the word ki relate to Leolam? Well, somebody asked last week, if you have on the bridles of the horses and on the headband of the high priest, it said kadosh. There might have been a vav in here. I'm not sure. Kadosh, lamed, yod, he, vav, he. Well, what it means is set apart unto Yahweh. We talked about what this word means, kadosh. It means sacredly ordained and specified. This guy is not your standard human. We're not going to impose the normal obligations on him. He's the high priest. His only job in life is that Yahweh is his concern, his master, in Yahweh's affairs. But that's going to be written on the bridles of the horses. And I was saying that we should make up these little bumper stickers with the blue, purple, red, white with a little kind of a engraving that says Kadosh LaYahweh and put a bumper sticker. It's kind of like the bridle of your horse, these days. But again, it's affecting our consciousness. Talking about using his name instead of using the Gimel Dalet word is to change our consciousness. Yahweh said, I am Kadosh, therefore you should be Kadosh. Well, who's he? What's his Kadoshness? These letters, Ayah, Asher, Ayah. I am the guy who determined these letters. This is me. This is my personal expression. Therefore, you should be this. These letters should be your personal expression. These letters represent my desire, my open mouth inside my chet, the container. You guys should be conformed to this. Yeshua, the sent one to save us and rescue us, because we were crying out, Yeshua, asking for saving and delivering from the tyrannical monsters of the oppressive governments on our backs that we got because our forefathers threw away his covenant. If we want to be saved and redeemed and delivered from them, how do we get it back? Where's the door? Where's the key? Where's the key? As we said, those other words, you look at those letters, the pei tav of the chet, the mouth, the sign of the covenant, the open door. How do you get, what's the key? Do you get in? You're going back to the words of the covenant. You go back to what terms were determined at the threshold where blood was spilt. Aleph, Dalet, Mem, Adam, I will bleed. Abraham cut the animals in half and split them apart, and it went through was two things, it says, a smoking furnace and a blazing torch. Two things went through? Who's that? The Father and the Son? What's our doctrine say? Wait a minute. In Hebrew, the vav is a bridge. It's a connector. It's a nail or a yoke, like taking two pieces of wood and nailing them together. They become one. Is it one thing that went through? One thing that looked like a smoking furnace, billowing, right? Hey, that's like a question mark. And a blazing torch, like a big exclamation point. There again, it's the imagery. You see the question mark and the exclamation point. Where do we look? Right here. What was in the bullet point underneath? The matters that were in the Ark of the Covenant, that were in the 10 Devarim, the 10 words. What was at the heart of the 10 Devarim? Goes back to the Dalet. What was in the Dalet? What is Yahweh's heart? What did he say? Well, here it is this word, Hileos lam chazo, for unto. The letter lamed can mean unto or regarding or for or by. If you read in the Psalm, it says, this is a psalm by David. There's the letter lamed. So it's like, these are the matters that are by Yahweh, concerning Yahweh, regarding, that you look at in reference to. That's all what the letter lamed means. The word lamed means teach and learn, which means around and around, again and again, repeat, go ever, and look at it like this whirlpool, vortex of around and around. So how do you regard the things of Yahweh? Around and around, teach and learn, regard them with the authority. The interesting thing about the pattern, which we'll get to in the week of the Kaf and Lamed, is that the Kaf is like these lines of instruction, like the Torah writings, and the Lamed is the shepherd's staff, which is the authority of the instructions. The instructions is like the constitutional protocols of the kingdom of Yahweh inside the fence, and the Lamed is like the Supreme Court, the authority which interprets the instructions as to the rightful use. Well, the notion of the correct application of the Torah instructions is translated in Hebrew as the word mishpat. It's spelled mem, shin, pei, tet, and the word shin, pei, tet is the word for judge. It's translated judgments, and when people say the judgments, the law has been done away with, this is one of the things they're referring to. The mishpat, whew, boy, those are done away with. Are they? If Yahweh's kingdom has certain protocols of behavior, which he said, this is my personal expression of my kadosh heart, which I'm giving you, my people Israel, to teach and learn so that you will be kadosh like I am kadosh, and I'm calling these my mishpat, and somebody else says, whew, boy, he's done away with those. Well, if we were taken away from the kingdom and given the tyrannical overlords to tell us what to do instead of doing what Yahweh said to do, that we must do, yes, we could say, yeah, they were done away with. But fortunately, we were given the prerogative and the great blessing to gimel back to him via the mechanism of the door, to come back to the blessing, to come back to the mishpat, to come back to the covenant, which is what we're talking about. So to say the mishpat were done away with, now you have to look close. Well, there's one whole parashah about the mishpat. There's one whole section. And it's like, these are just to say what's right and what's wrong. And when it says an eye for an eye, it's like, oh, boy, I've accidentally knocked the guy out. Now somebody's going to take a screwdriver and stick it in my eye? That doesn't seem fair. Or is it value for value? If you break a guy's shovel, buy him a new shovel. Isn't that fair? It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. So if you say, for regarding the matters of, and this word olam can be translated as the world, it's also eternity. Concerning the matters of eternity, what's translated for unto eternity is your mercy and your kindness, because the word chesed is translated as mercy and kindness. But if you say for the matters of eternity, then you look at chesed. Well, this is the fence, and the word samek dalet is where is like the stocks that you get tortured in. But, let me see if I have this down here. Oh boy, we'll have to get to this in the next break. The meaning of the letter het, samek, according to the dictionary, I wanted to show you what it was. It slips my mind at the moment. The point is, the samek in the paleo lines up with the menorah. Same position. It's an engineered structure. So here is the kingdom, the walls of the kingdom, the fence, and here's the engineered structure. You look at the book of Revelation, where it talks about Yeshua having these lampstands, and the secret of the 7 stars we talked about. The word for star is the same word for fire extinguisher. He can put out the light of these stars. If you look at the word in Revelation 21:27 and 22:15, it says, those who invent, craft, manufacture, or perpetuate lies or falsehoods have no part in my kingdom. Now you may think you're saved. You may believe you're going to heaven. You may be standing here waiting, where's that darn rapture bus anyway? We should have been out of here by now. I think I'm good. I still have my ticket. But if you are perpetuating falsehood, there's no part in his kingdom. And so even though you're standing there on Judgment Day, you say, hey, we did miracles in your name, and we preached in your name, and he says, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, anomio in Greek, I never knew you. It's like, what do you mean you never knew us? We did miracles in your name. We cast out demons in your name. We did all kinds of crazy stuff in your name. But for him to say, I never knew you, we could talk about how many times the word Yada Yahweh is in there, which is knowing Yahweh. We've got 2 minutes here. This is knowing him. I would put to you that this is knowing him, and the Ruach HaKodesh will only lead us into the truth of what these things mean. And anybody that says this stuff is changed or done away with might mean, well, you're just expressing the curse. Yeah, it was taken away from us. But to say it's been done away with, now you have to go back and say, would Yahweh change his heart? Would he not reveal his heart? If you go back to the Dalet, my point is this. This has to do with the word for sparing. That's what it is. It has to do with sparing, merciful kindness. The key, the Dalet of the structure of Yahweh's light is merciful kindness to one another. And if you read through Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel and Hosea and Amos, it's always telling Israel, you've torn each other apart. I told you to love your neighbor. Merciful kindness is the door. You want the covenant back? Do the merciful kindness, which is the expression of my heart. And to show you how much you hate merciful kindness, I brought my word in the flesh, and you tore him apart, ripped him to shreds, let him bleed. That's what you've done to each other. That's what you've done to my word. That's what you did to Yeshua. If you want the covenant back, merciful kindness, sparing each other with forgiveness, beseeching the blessing for one another, not exacting vengeance, but Yahweh has decreed, the man who does what he will, it will come back on his head. That's the law. We don't need to take that law into our own hands. Just like the Gimel and the Ayin, what every man does will come back. That's the law. It has not been done away with. If we send out loving kindness, chesed, emet and chesed around our necks is what he said. We want the door back. We want to enter the door. We want to come back to the terms of the covenant. How do you prove you love Yahweh and want to be in his kingdom? John said, you can say you love Elohim, but if you terrorize and ruin and harm and seek conniving, vindictive mechanisms against your neighbor and your brother, you have nothing to do with Elohim. You're lying to yourself and lying to each other and lying from your pulpits. It has nothing to do with your words. It's your actions living his word. And these things are all about the manifestation and expression of Yahweh's heart, his Dalet, which is tender, loving kindness. Chesed is the one greatest zero right there, the middle of the bullseye dot of what's underneath the Zadi, underneath the Kuf, which is the Dalet, which is what the Gimel came to present to us as the Dalet. And Yeshua said, I'm the only way to the Father. Unto eternity. You want to enter eternity, be kadosh, just like his kindness is kadosh. His chesed is the key, is the desire, is the key to the door. We don't have to wait for him to bring it. We have to do it to each other. Love Yahweh your Elohim. Who is he? The loving kind one. And love your neighbor as yourself. It all goes back to us doing it present tense. That's the Dalet.